before we get to this very high drama battle, with the one Winklevoss against, you mentioned legend or whatever Barry Silbert might be. I do want to talk about the fact that, to your point, it was the Fed, I believe the FDIC and the OCC all came out with this statement also warning banks. Essentially, it's dangerous to hold crypto. I mean, it seemed a little belated, a little bit odd. What do you make of it?
It's posturing. They did it because they had to.
We told you so?
Yeah, no, because they already did tell so.
Right.
Pretty much every regulator in the United States, most regulators in the world, has issued those warnings. They did it years ago, and they've done it repeatedly.
So it's just the latest.
Some regulators have done it once. Some regulators have done it multiple times. I think that maybe the biggest difference there was the seeming coordination. I think that's perhaps a little bit of a change from past warnings. But the content of the warning was very similar to past warnings about crypto being a risky asset. I think the timing, it's mostly just to give the appearance of doing something. They should have been doing something a lot sooner than that, honestly. The fact that FTX, that they had so little insight into FTX in spite of seeming cooperation from Sam Bankman-Fried.
Investors had so little insight into SBF.
They should not have been caught off guard.
Yeah.
There should have been no caught off guard here.
Right.
And the fact that this central organization dealing with assets that have been variously described as commodities and securities seemingly was so opaque to regulators makes those regulators look bad.
So now they're standing firm and reminding us, lest you think it's a good time to buy. Caveat emptor, sort of.
They seem to be very willing to let the problems play out and deal with them on a case-by-case basis. There's been a call for new regulation for years, and those regulators refuse to do it. We don't need new regulation, they say. We have a very clear definition of a security. We have a very clear definition of a commodity. It's up to you guys to figure out where you fit in there, and if you screw up, we're going to come get you.
Right.
And so we've seen what that looks like now. We've seen billions of dollars seemingly disappear. We've seen hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people be harmed. And they don't look good. The regulators don't look good by waiting until such a giant catastrophe happened to act. Right. Now, the fact that these three regulators, I think, are speaking in some coordination is important. It shows a change of tone, it's a change of pitch, I should say. They're sort of elevating it a bit. And I do believe that it might mark the beginning of some actual change.
Which has been threatened for some time, right? I mean, it's something that everybody's been looking for.
Been asking for.
Yeah.
So it's not new in any sort of meaningful revolutionary way. It's more of just a progression of what's been happening for a long time, and I think the timing says more about them kind of looking to save face than anything else.
So talk about this Winklevoss v. Silbert. I'm looking at a letter here on Twitter.
Yeah.
What is going on?
So I want to take a half step backwards on that,
please.
Because I think the context there is actually really interesting. So yesterday was January 3rd, the 14th anniversary of the Genesis, the Bitcoin Genesis block.
Yeah.
When Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, or they were,
remarkably still anonymous.
Remarkably still anonymous, though there are some more likely candidates than others. Hit that enter button on his, her, or they computer and started the Bitcoin blockchain. They embedded a message in the code of that Genesis block. Sort of like if you think of when a hostage taker asks their hostage to hold a newspaper in front of a photo to prove the date, right? Satoshi Nakamoto embedded a headline into the Bitcoin Genesis block, which is Chancellor on the brink of second bailout. There's very little additional.
What does that mean? That's very cryptic.
Yeah. So Chancellor on the brink of second bailout. first of all, you have to ask, what was the bailout, right?
Yeah.
These were banks, UK banks, but happened all around the world.
14 years ago, so of course we're talking about...
During the Great Recession.
The Great Recession, yeah.
These banks behaving irresponsibly, lending money that they had borrowed from other people, lending other people's money that they had put into bank accounts. It's called ReHypothecating.
Rolling up subprime debt into
subprime debt,
AAA rated
hiding
securities.
it a little bit, making it look like everybody had more money than they did.
So this is a
obscuring
caution,
the
or
quality.
he or she or they were basically saying, "Be warned, this could happen again."
I think it was more a warning against. Well, to a degree, yeah, but there's a second component there, which is the chancellor. The chancellor doing the bailouts, right? So these banks behaved irresponsibly. The government got involved. Essentially, and it's an oversimplification, the system was at risk,
right.
and they printed a bunch of money out and basically gave it to these banks. It's an oversimplification, but that's essentially what happened, to sort of keep them afloat. They were considered systemically important. If the banks went out, retail economies would collapse, mom and pops would be harmed, the ripple effects would be unimaginable, so the story goes. And instead of letting that happen and letting the banks learn those lessons, the government bailed them out. Many people, many early Bitcoin adopters resonated with that warning and got involved to create sort of an antidote. They saw Bitcoin and its reliance on mathematics instead of government control for its value as an opportunity to build something new. Sadly,
no government equals no chancellor equals no backing when things go wrong.
Exactly. And sadly, what we saw on the 14th anniversary of the creation of that Genesis block with that warning embedded in it was an echo almost of what had happened, except now it was happening in Bitcoin itself. Not Bitcoin, just Bitcoin. It was the way that people were treating Bitcoin.
So